drawn a line under the inheritance that I faced. Public finances are now on a firm footing.
Tax. But I wonder, what was the point of all of that at 8:10 this morning? Was it simply to calm the markets? I simply don't know. In fact, what was it all about? You tell me.
So Rachel Reeves has just made another promise. And if you believe this one, I've got a bridge in Tower Hamlets to sell you. Nigel Farage has absolutely torn into the Chancellor for what he's calling a pattern of saying one thing and doing the complete opposite. And honestly, the receipts are damning. But before we proceed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on the UK political insight. Thank you. Stick around because this is getting spicy and you need to hear what's really going on behind those Treasury doors. Right, let's talk about trust, or rather the complete absence of it when it comes to Rachel Reeves, because according to Farage, the Chancellor has turned breaking promises into an Olympic sport. And he's not wrong. Let's start with the big one from the general election. Remember when Reeves stood there, hand on heart, pledging that Labour would be the most pro-business government the country has ever seen? Yeah, about that. Fast forward to her budget, and what did businesses actually get? A £25 billion jobs tax that's already driven thousands of firms to the wall. We're talking 234,000 jobs destroyed. And counting. That number is still climbing. She didn't stop there either. Inheritance tax on family businesses? Check. The very businesses that have been passed down through generations, keeping communities alive, employing local people, suddenly getting hammered with a tax bill that could force them to sell up. And surprise, surprise, entrepreneurs are doing what any sane person would do. They're leaving in droves. So, when someone promises to be your best friend and then immediately punches you in the face, you've got to question their definition of friendship, right? That's essentially what's happened here. The most pro-business government ever has turned into the most anti-business nightmare since, well, probably ever. But wait, it gets better. Last November, Reeves assured everyone, absolutely categorically, that she wasn't coming back for more tax hikes. No more raids on your wallet, promise. Well, Wednesday rolled around and boom, up to £35 billion in new taxes. At this point, believing Rachel Reeves is like believing your mate who says they'll definitely pay you back next week. Narrator voice. They never did. The pattern is clear as day. She says one thing, does the opposite, rinse and repeat. And every single time she wheels out that line about fixing the foundations of the economy, Farage says he wants to scream. Honestly, same. Because let's look at what these fixed foundations actually look like, shall we? Growth has flatlined, completely stagnant. Unemployment, soaring like a particularly ambitious seagull after your fish and chips. Food prices have rocketed because apparently eating is now a luxury hobby. The debt and deficit are climbing faster than your electricity bill in winter. When Farage says Reeves has fixed the economy the same way an old-school gangland boss would fix you if you scraped his Daimler, that's not hyperbole. That's just accurate. Here's a statistic that should terrify anyone in government. Literally 0% of the population thinks the economy is in a very good state. 0. You could ask 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, and not a single one would say things are going well. Yet Reeves keeps parroting her false mantra like a broken record stuck on the world's most irritating song. Now, yesterday, she threw out yet another hostage to fortune. She claimed that rising public debt is not a labor virtue, which is hilarious because right now, it feels like the only virtue they've actually got. The numbers don't lie, even if politicians do. The Chancellor borrowed £17.4 billion in October alone, 1 month. In total since April, that's £116.8 billion borrowed. That's $10 billion more than forecast. When you're that far over budget, you don't get to lecture people about fiscal responsibility. That's like maxing out 5 credit cards and then giving your mate advice on saving money. Talk is cheap. Action is what matters, and the actions are telling a very different story to the words coming out of the Chancellor's mouth. Let's move on to inflation and the cost of living crisis, because this is where it gets really frustrating. Reeves boasted she would grip inflation and sort out the cost of living crisis. Noble goals. Except she's the one who fanned the flames just as inflation was finally starting to fade. Her jobs tax pushed prices higher because firms aren't just going to absorb those costs out of the goodness of their own hearts. They pass them on to you, to me, to everyone buying anything. Then throw in inflation-busting public sector pay awards and the minimum wage hike, and you've got a recipe for prices going up faster than a SpaceX rocket. She created the problem she claimed she'd solve. It's like an arsonist joining the fire brigade and then taking credit for putting out fires. Farage clearly thinks we're being treated like fools, and yesterday proved it when Reeves came out with yet another pledge that has absolutely no grounding in reality whatsoever. She said controlling public spending will require reforming the welfare system. And you know what? She's actually right about that. Controlling spending absolutely demands reform of our broken benefit system and culture. Finally, something sensible, a plan that might actually make a difference. This could be the moment where words and actions align. Unfortunately, nothing is exactly what we got. Reform? Nope. Change? Not happening. More than 100 Labour MPs threatened to vote against the plan, and Keir Starmer did what Keir Starmer does best. He folded like a cheap deck chair, another humiliating U-turn. Add it to the collection. Farage actually has some sympathy for Reeves here, and honestly, so do I. She tried. She genuinely attempted to do something about welfare reform, but Starmer wilted under pressure. This is the second time he's failed to back her after reversing her winter fuel payment cut. Imagine trying to do your job while your boss keeps undermining you at every turn. It's almost tragic. Almost. Reeves likes to style herself as the Iron Chancellor. Strong, resolute, unshakable. But you can't be the Iron Chancellor when your Prime Minister is made of wet cardboard. It's impossible. You need backbone from the top, and right now the top is about as sturdy as a soggy biscuit dunked in tea for too long. But here's the thing. Despite knowing all this, despite the lack of support, Reeves keeps pretending everything's fine. She'll stand up on Wednesday and she won't do a single thing to reform welfare. Not one thing. Instead, she'll blow an extra £15 billion on benefits, including scrapping the 2-child cap. $15 billion, just casually tossed onto the spending pile like it's loose change down the back of the sofa. Her words mean absolutely nothing at this point. Words are all we're getting on Wednesday. Pretty speeches, impressive vocab, confident delivery, but zero substance. The bill will follow, though. Oh, it'll follow all right, and it'll be enormous. This is going to blow up in her face spectacularly. It's confirming the habit that Farage has identified. She simply makes stuff up, says whatever sounds good in the moment, whatever will get her through the next news cycle, and worries about the consequences later. Except the consequences aren't landing on her. They're landing on taxpayers, on you and me. We're the ones who will ultimately pay the price for these broken promises and empty words. When a politician's word becomes meaningless, when you can't trust a single pledge or promise they make, that's not just a political problem. That's a crisis of governance. How are we supposed to plan our businesses, our lives, our futures when the people making the rules keep changing them on a whim and breaking every commitment they make? Farage has exposed a pattern here that's genuinely concerning. It's not about left or right, Labour or Conservative. It's about basic honesty and following through on what you say. If you promise to be pro-business, be pro-business. If you promise no more tax hikes, don't immediately implement massive tax hikes. If you promise to reform welfare, actually reform welfare instead of spending billions more. The tragedy is that real reform is desperately needed. The welfare system does need fixing. Public spending does need controlling. The economy does need proper foundations. But none of that happens when words are meaningless and promises are just empty air that dissipate the moment they're spoken. So what happens next? Well, Wednesday comes and Reeves makes her announcement. More words, more pledges, more promises. And based on everything we've seen, we'd be absolute mugs to believe any of it. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Believing Rachel Reeves after this track record would qualify. The real question is how long this can continue before something breaks. You can only break promises for so long before people stop listening entirely. You can only tax businesses into oblivion before they all leave. You can only borrow billions while claiming fiscal responsibility before the markets lose confidence. At some point, reality catches up, and when it does, it won't be pretty. If you found this breakdown useful, smash that like button because it genuinely helps push this content to more people who need to hear it. UK Political Insight brings you multiple videos every single day, cutting through the spin and showing you what's really happening in Westminster. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update because trust me, with this government, there's always something happening. Drop a comment below telling me whether you think Reeves can recover from this pattern of broken promises or if her credibility is completely shot. I read every single comment and I want to hear what you think. Now go watch that video right there because we're diving even deeper into Labour's economic chaos. I'll see you in the next one.